Hello, hello. Hi, I'm Perianne. I'm the founder and CEO of the Chamber of Digital Commerce. We're a trade association that's advocating for the digital asset and the blockchain technology space, headquartered in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon, Natalia. Thank you for having us and putting a great event together. I just flew in 15 hours from Middle East, so my brain would be a little foggy, but glad to be here. Maja Vujinovic, I run O Group. I've been 12 years in crypto space. Lawyer by trade, also a former CIO at General Electric. I ran all GE's digital transformation globally and catalyzed blockchain in 2013 across various divisions. I'm here to share some opinion around global frameworks and regulation, because we spend a lot of time working with governments around the world, and we have a fund as well.
Hi, my name is Christian Busch. I'm an investor in the blockchain crypto space since 2016. I'm also very active in the real estate space. Started a real estate investing firm in 2017 and have been pretty involved in both sectors and the intersection of crypto and real estate for the last few years.
Thank you. Hakob?
Hello. Please let me know if I'm a little more soft-spoken than the others. And you can hear me in the back. My name is Hakob Stepanyan. I'm a manager at BDO on the forensics advisory side, which means I work on anything litigation support related, forensic accounting, investigations, monitorships, and then I also co-lead the integration of digital asset services within BDO's advisory. It just means that we enhance our existing services with digital assets, capabilities, and knowledge base. We've done some investigations, compliance work, as well as strategic accounting, tax, anything under the sun related to digital assets. And so I guess, yeah, that's my spiel. Thank you.
Thank you. As we've heard from the mayors to arrest today, that the outlook for the next year seems to be more positive on regulation aspect, and we have the honor to have Perianne here, who is leading the digital commerce chamber to lobby for all the changes that we need in Web3, so that we don't get penalties for innovation, but rather we have a clarity on regulation and frameworks so we can freely innovate and invent. So Perianne, what was the biggest win this year?
We've had some pretty big wins besides the fact that there's been a lot of setbacks in the past year. I guess yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the name that shall not be spoken catastrophe. And that's caused a lot of criticism and just pushback from the regulatory and policy community in general. One of the biggest policy changes that we got this year is we are getting official GAAP accounting standards for digital assets. This is a really big deal for all companies that want to put digital assets on the balance sheet. We currently don't have accounting standards. This has been named the #1 barrier to the corporate adoption of digital assets. It's very, very difficult to put this on the balance sheet if you don't know how to account for it, if you think it could impact your relationship with your accountant, and more importantly, if it could be punitive to your financial statements to do so. So this was a huge win. It's currently in implementation, and FASB actually put out a statement just a couple weeks ago saying companies that want to go ahead and exercise fair value accounting for digital assets can go ahead and do so. So that's kind of like I don't know, not as sexy of an issue as like getting comprehensive legislation passed through the legislative process. But on legislation, there's also been very, very significant efforts to get regulatory clarity through legislation done in Congress. The main bill that's being worked on, it's called the FIT Act. This passed all of the committees of jurisdiction in the House. It went through financial services and the Ag Committee, which oversees CFTC, and it passed both committees with bipartisan support. So it's a pretty significant step forward in achieving that regulatory clarity that's desperately needed for crypto.
Thank you. And I think one of the biggest win of this year was also the XRP win, the Ripple win, where now this cryptocurrency is admitted as a non-security, which means for companies like Propy, who has cryptocurrency launched in a very compliant manner, that we can breathe freely, that our cryptocurrency can be used as a utility token, and it could be traded, and we wouldn't be as worried before this verdict. So the question to any of the panelists, what do you think this win of Ripple meant, winning against SEC? What did it mean for the industry?
Sure, I can go first. I think the key win in all of this was that the secondary market for digital assets would not qualify as a security, right? So in the launch, you might have to go through some regulatory compliance or security designation, or go directly to institutional or accredited investors. But the secondary markets are free to trade. So that is a very key win, and it opens the door for interoperable platforms, and so that you're not stuck with walled gardens of security tokens versus the standard tokens that trade on the decentralized exchanges or traditional crypto exchanges. So I think that was like to me, one of the bigger wins. And so it means, it'll be interesting to see how that translates to other quote unquote security tokens, right? Fractional tokens, asset-backed tokens. Some of the tokens they're being launched around fixed income or structured products. So we'll see how that develops and whether the courts uphold it. But it's a very interesting one.
Absolutely. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's great that XRP was declared not to be a security. However, it still leaves the open question of whether we have to fight this fight for every single token, or whether there can be a framework that actually makes it easier for people to understand. Because in crypto, you still have two types of investors, right? You have real investors who are looking to invest in these properties, and you've got the people who are trying to flip shitcoins. And XRP is probably more traditionally shitcoin related. And I don't think that this alone is going to move it over to the institutional side. So I would still love for the SEC and the other regulators to agree on a clear framework. It's not the Howey test, which they keep reinterpreting, on what makes a security token versus what makes a commodity token.
Absolutely. And as we speak about the Bitcoin ETFs today, Bitwise CIO was here. Later we'll have Kathy Wood from ARK Investment, who also applied for Bitcoin ETF. How do you think most likely it will happen this year, and why the media in the industry are so positive, the government to actually potentially to approve it? Anyone?
I mean, I can start on that, just kind of globally, the outlook. I mean, for sure, just spending a month now in Middle East, we've seen everybody's paying attention to what SEC is doing, right? That's number one. I think a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't matter what happens in the US, will drive our regulation. And that's true. What's happening, for example, in Singapore and Hong Kong and in Middle East, I mean, these governments are rushing really, really, really fast in order to have a clear regulation on digital assets, and particularly on tokenization, right? Because they do have a lot of real estate and oil and et cetera that they want to tokenize, right? I think there is an excitement around the ETF naturally, because that would allow a floodgates of further users, right? And it would give us a sense of some kind of a security from the government, at least, right? Because I think, as Christian noted, I think there are investors out there who want to invest in real crypto, but they are been afraid of investing, of what does that token actually mean, and will I get penalized as a company investing in that? So I think, I'm not sure it will get approved this year, particularly this year. That's my bet. And I think it's very political, right? Because the moment that gets approved, we also have an enormous amount of floodgates of retail coming in, and I just don't think our system at the moment, for a lack of clarity, can actually sustain that. All of those regulations have to trickle down to everybody, not just to crypto, but Robinhoods of the world and Apples of the world and everybody else. So I don't think it's coming this year, but it's definitely coming, right?
It's absolutely political. This was proven when SEC Chairman Gary Gensler testified in the Senate Banking Committee, and he was asked by Senator Toomey, what is it going to take to get a spot Bitcoin ETF approved? And his response was, well, as soon as you give me jurisdiction over Bitcoin, then that would suffice. In the same hearing, he also said that Bitcoin is a commodity. It's outside of the SEC's jurisdiction. So in other words, this is being held hostage for Emperor Gensler to get as much power as he possibly can. And that is exactly what the DC courts ruled in the lawsuit Grayscale versus the SEC. Grayscale won its suit. There was 3 judges on that case. 2 were Democrats, 1 was a Republican, and it was a unified response from the judges that the SEC is being arbitrary and capricious. At the Chamber of Digital Commerce, we are advocating for a spot Bitcoin ETF to come to market as soon as possible. I agree with Maja. We don't know what the timeline is. Nobody knows that. That's a $1 billion, potentially $1 trillion bet. But the markets seem to think it's coming soon. And you can see that demonstrated by short positions being closed out, as well as the discount at GBTC starting to narrow and narrow and narrow every day. So the markets seem to think it's coming soon. But of course, that's information that's kept confidential between the SEC and the issuers. But the reason why I've been so passionate about this issue is you have your policymakers and your regulators that are very critical of crypto, and they say we need greater protection for consumers. In the same breath, they have for 10 years blocked every attempt to bring a product to market that would add consumer protections for retail investors. You can't have it both ways. That is classic doublespeak. We need a spot Bitcoin ETF now, and we are pushing for that.
I'll take the contrarian side on the Bitcoin ETF. I think at least from a price perspective, I think the ETF is already priced in. It's more of a sell the news event at this point, because the people who want to buy GBTC can already do that. The people who want to buy futures.
You think it's priced in already? So if
absolutely.
If ETF gets approved, you don't think the price is going to
increase? I actually think, if anything, it's going to drop in the short run.
I
agree as well.
I don't agree.
I'll take that.
There's trillions of dollars sitting in the brokerage that's pent up. I think it's going to be a floodgate.
Well, GBTC trades right now. I could buy $1 billion worth of GBTC if I wanted to.
But that's closed end. You can't have redemptions. It's a different
I could
product.
still buy it. I could buy MicroStrategy if I wanted to.
I think you will have a pullback before it really, to your point, if floodgates completely open. Yeah, I can totally see what Christian is.
I won't add too much to this. I thought that was an amazing. Yeah, I'll agree to the contrarian view for sure. I don't see the ETF being as big of a deal as everybody's making out to be, but it does serve as a more of a acceptance, a broader acceptance by the institutions, and another avenue for those who are less inclined to hold their own cryptocurrencies in their own custody, whether it's custody providers or their own custody solutions, right? It's just once you're at an institutional level, whether it's a family foundation or an endowment, there's little restrictions around the assets that you're holding personally. And so that's what'll get, probably make that push, but it's not necessarily a big retail push. I think if anything, circular economy and favorable tax treatments is what's really going to drive the velocity for crypto related transactions, so that you're not triple taxed on earned, cap gains, and sales tax.
And Maja, you just returned from Saudi from a huge finance and VC conference. What's the environment? What's the mood in the community in that region in terms of the crypto AI regulation?
Yeah, I was in United Arab Emirates and Saudi for about a month. We're working with governments there on this, and there's a huge growing community. As most of you know, probably in here, a lot of the U.S. hedge funds have moved to that region for specifically what we are discussing here is the lack of clarity. I think their governments, remember, have almost a clean slate, right, to start anew. So there's no legacy systems per se, and they can decide what they need to decide. And there's usually a one man that makes the decision, right? So that's much easier. But they're definitely pushing forward. And I would even say that to some extent, they will be providing protection for companies, even US companies that move there. They provide protection against SEC rulings. I mean, they have made that statement clear. So I think lots of people that have been moving there are looking to work with people like here in government and lawyers and companies. But I would say they're definitely more accepting of discussion. I think to Perianne's point, this is really, really important. Even Coinbase has been 32 times, right, going up to the Congress and the SEC and saying, okay, look, this is what we need answers to, and you're not giving us anything. And then they keep being hit with lawsuits. What's happening there is they're opening doors and saying, okay, help us figure it out. Help us set the rules, because obviously the Howey test is not just copy paste for crypto. We need new regulation for decentralization. We need new regulation for onboarding the people that the banks in this country have completely forgotten. So that's where Middle East comes in and says, actually, we understand the unbanked, we understand the remittances. Help us, you as an entrepreneurs and regulators, help us understand how this needs to go. So that's a big difference, right?
That's an interesting take. Yes. Thank